January 17, 1968. Quang Province, Republic of Vietnam. The morning monsoon drips through triple canopy jungle as Private First Class James Jimmy Castellaniano crouches behind a moss-covered log, his heart hammering against his ribs. He's been missing for 8 hours. He's 19 years old. He's a mess hall cook. And right now, through the wall of vegetation 50 m ahead, he's watching 30 Viet Cong soldiers unload wooden crates into a camouflaged bunker complex. His M16 rifle feels foreign in his hands. In 3 months at Phi Base Susan, he's never fired it outside the range. His job description involves eggs, not enemies. Powdered milk, not patrol, but somewhere between the Phi Base and the forward landing zone where he was supposed to deliver hot rations. His convoy hit an ambush. The driver panicked. Castellano tumbled from the lurching supply truck into elephant grass taller than a man. By the time he got his bearings, the convoy was gone, racing back toward base through a hail of automatic weapons fire. What Castellano doesn't know is that his just discovered Phi Base Echo, the largest North Vietnamese ammunition depot in the Central Highlands. What he doesn't know is that this bunker complex contains an estimated 43 tons of Chinese-manufactured ammunition, enough to supply 3 enemy regiments for 6 months of sustained operations. What he doesn't know is that somewhere in those camouflaged bunkers are the rockets that killed 4 Americans at Phi Base Kate just 2 days ago. And what he absolutely doesn't know is that his accidental discovery is about to trigger the largest airstrike in Third Corps history and save an estimated 300 American lives. According to declassified MACV intelligence reports, enemy ammunition caches in the Central Highlands supplied approximately 60% of NVA operations throughout the 1968 Tet Offensive. Finding them was nearly impossible. The jungle was the enemy's home. American forces controlled the fire bases by day. Charlie owned the jungle by night. Intelligence officers estimated that for every cache destroyed, 5 more operated undetected. Search and destroy missions had a success rate of just 8%. Most American soldiers would finish their tours without ever glimpsing an enemy supply line. But Jimmy Castellano isn't most soldiers. He doesn't have training. He doesn't have backup. He doesn't even have a map that makes sense anymore. What he has is dumb luck, sharp eyes, and approximately 40 minutes before those NVA soldiers finish their work and fan out to search the perimeter. The clock is ticking. To understand why Castellano's discovery matters, you have to understand just how badly American forces were losing the intelligence war in early 1968. The Central Highlands of South Vietnam represented a tactical nightmare. Unlike the rice paddies of the Mong Delta or the coastal cities, this was pure jungle, mountainous, dense, and utterly controlled by the enemy. The Ho Chi Minh Trail snaked through neighboring Laos and Cambodia, funneling men and material into staging areas hidden beneath canopies so thick that aerial reconnaissance was virtually useless. General William Westmoreland's strategy relied on finding and destroying enemy supply lines, but the North Vietnamese had perfected the art of concealment over 23 years of continuous warfare. American commanders threw everything at the problem. They tried infrared photography, seismic sensors, chemical defoliants, long-range reconnaissance patrols, and indigenous tracker teams. Results were marginal at best. A December 1967 intelligence assessment concluded that U.S. forces were interdicting less than 15% of enemy supplies moving through the region. The other 85% simply vanished into the jungle. The human cost was staggering. Between November 1967 and January 1968, Phi Base Susan's area of operations recorded 73 enemy attacks, ranging from sniper harassment to full battalion-level assaults. Casualty reports documented 42 Americans killed and 137 wounded. The enemy attacked with seeming impunity, their ammunition supplies apparently limitless. Every patrol returned with the same frustrating report. Contact made, casualties sustained, enemy withdrew, no cache found. Expert consensus held that destroying North Vietnamese logistics required either massive ground invasions of Laos and Cambodia politically impossible or a level of signals intelligence that didn't yet exist. Colonel Thomas Henderson, Phi Base Susan's brigade commander, put it bluntly in a January 10th staff meeting. "We're fighting blind. Charlie moves supplies past us every night, and we're counting muzzle flashes." His S2 intelligence officer estimated there were at least 6 major ammunition depots within 20 kilometers of the fire base. Finding even one would require either extraordinary luck or a level of tactical innovation that nobody had demonstrated yet. The stakes couldn't be higher. Intelligence officers knew something big was coming. Intercepted radio traffic suggested an unusually large buildup of enemy forces. Prisoners mentioned a general offensive, but without knowing where the enemy stored his ammunition, American commanders couldn't preemptively strike. They could only wait, reinforce defensive positions, and pray their Phi-base walls would hold when the hammer finally dropped. This was the strategic situation on January 16, 1968, when Colonel Henderson made a decision that would inadvertently change everything. He ordered his logistics officer to begin hot meal deliveries to forward positions. Morale was plummeting. Hot A rations, actual cooked food instead of C-ration cans, might boost spirits before whatever offensive was brewing finally kicked off. It was a small gesture, a rare echelonicity that seemed almost absurdly domestic given either circumstances. The logistics officer selected 3 mess hall personnel for the detail. One of them was Private First Class James Castellano, 19 years old, from Queens, New York. Castellano had been in country for 3 months and 10 days. He'd volunteered for me duty specifically because it seemed safer than infantry work. His older brother, Marco, had done 2 tours with the 123rd Airborne and come home with shrapnel scars and nightmares. Jimmy Castellano wanted no part of that. He wanted to serve his time, stay clean, and get back to his father's restaurant on Steinway Street. Cooking eggs for soldiers seemed like a reasonable compromise between duty and survival. He was about to learn that in Vietnam there was no gray area. There was only the jungle, and the jungle didn't care what your MOS said. James Paul Castellano grew up in Atoria, Queens, where his father ran a neighborhood Italian restaurant called Rosario's. From age 12, Jimmy worked the kitchen every summer, prep cook, dishwasher, eventually working the line during Friday dinner rush. He knew his way around a commercial kitchen. He did not know his way around a war zone. His army recruiter had painted a straightforward picture. Learn a skill. Serve your country. Use the GI Bill for college. Castellano scored high enough on his ISVAP to qualify for several technical specialties, but when he saw food service specialist on the list of available Moses, it felt like fate. He'd been cooking since he was tall enough to reach the stove. Why not get paid for it? Basic training at Fort Dix was unremarkable. Advanced individual training at Fort Lee, Virginia, focused on field kitchen operations, food safety, and large-scale meal preparation. Castellano learned to cook for 200 soldiers using portable equipment. He learned proper storage temperatures for perishable items in tropical climates. He learned sanitation protocols and menu planning. He did not learn land navigation. He did not learn small unit tactics. He fired his M16 rifle exactly 3 times during his entire training cycle. Once to zero the weapon, twice to qualify. He scored 22 out of 40 targets, just barely passing marksman qualification. When his orders came through for Vietnam, his father sat him down in the restaurant's back office. "You keep your head down," Rosario Castellano said. "You stay with the cooks. You don't volunteer for nothing. You understand me?" "Nothing," Jimmy promised. His brother Marco, home on leave before his second tour, gave different advice. "Forget what they taught you at Fort Lee. Over there, everybody's infantry. You learn to move, you learn to shoot, or you learn to die." Jimmy deployed with a replacement battalion in October 1967, processed through the in-country reception station at Beni Hoa and drew assignment to Phi Base Susan with the 4th Infantry Division's Forward Support Battalion. His job was exactly what he trained for, operating the I mess hall, preparing meals for approximately 350 soldiers, managing food inventory. It was hot, exhausting work in a tin-roofed building that baked like an oven by midday, but it was safe. The Phi Base perimeter had sandbags, concertina wire, bunkers, and a battery of 105mm howitzers. Charlie lobbed mortars at them every few nights, but the rounds rarely hit anything important. Castellano fell into a routine. Wake at 4:30, start the coffee, prep breakfast for the morning shift. Lunch was usually C rations, supplemented with whatever the supply chain delivered, canned vegetables, powdered potatoes, occasionally fresh fruit if a helicopter had space. Dinner was the main effort, hot food, real protein when available. By 1900 hours, the kitchen was secured, and Castellano would write letters home, play cards, or sleep the dreamless sleep of the physically exhausted. Then, Colonel Henderson ordered hot meals delivered forward, and Jimmy Castellano's war changed forever. January 17, 1968 begins like any other mission. The convoy consists of 2 trucks, one carrying merit cans full of scrambled eggs, bacon, and coffee. The other loaded with supplies for the forward landing zone. Castellano rides in the passenger seat of the lead truck, his M16 propped between his knees. He's wearing a flak jacket that doesn't fit right and a helmet that keeps sliding forward over his eyes. Specialist Danny Wilcox drives chain-smoking Marlboro and complaining about the road. The ambush happens at 0847 hours 3 kilometers from the landing zone. The first indication is the sound, a metallic crack that Castellano's brain doesn't immediately recognize as gunfire. Then the windshield spider web. Willock screams something incomprehensible and floors the accelerator. The truck lurches. Castano instinctively grabs for a handhold, but the vehicle is already fishtailing on the muddy road. What happens next lasts perhaps 3 seconds, but unfolds with dreamlike slowness. The truck's rear tire catches the soft shoulder. The vehicle tilts. Castellano feels himself sliding toward the passenger door. The door pops open. He'd never properly latched it. And then his falling, tumbling through the air, hitting tall grass, rolling, the breath knocked clean out of his lungs. When his vision clears, the trucks are gone. He can hear them. Engine noise fading into the distance, accompanied by sporadic rifle fire. He lies still in the elephant grass, 6 foot tall and thick as a cornfield, his heart trying to pound its way out of his chest. After what feels like an hour, but is probably 90 seconds, the shooting stops. The jungle settles back into its normal orchestra of birds and insects. Castano takes inventory. He's bruised, but uninjured. His rifle is somewhere in the grass. He finds it after 30 seconds of panicked searching. His helmet is gone. He has 2 full magazines of ammunition, a canteen, and absolutely no idea where he is. The road is visible through the grass 10 m away. Following it would be suicide. The ambushers could still be there waiting. He decides to move perpendicular to the road, deeper into the jungle until he's clear of the kill zone. Then he'll parallel the road back toward Phi-Base Susan. It's a plan born of panic rather than tactical thinking, but it's a plan. He starts walking. 2 hours later, he's utterly lost. The jungle here is dense to the point of claustrophobia. Towering hardwood trees strangled by vines. Undergrowth so thick he has to force his way through. His uniform is soaked with sweat. The humidity is suffocating. He tries to use the sun for direction, but the canopy is too thick. He tries to find the road again, but every direction looks identical. And that's when he hears voices, Asian voices, speaking Vietnamese. He freezes, drops to a crouch, and through a gap in the vegetation, he sees them. 30 soldiers, weapons stacked, wooden crates, camouflaged bunkers, an ammunition depot so large it could supply an entire division. And not a single American knows it exists. Castellano watches the NVA soldiers for 7 minutes, barely breathing, before backing slowly away. It takes him another 40 minutes of careful movement before his confidant is out of earshot. Then he does something that will become legendary in Phi-Base Susan's oral history. He climbs a tree. The hardwood rises perhaps 80 feet, its upper branches breaking through the canopy. Castellano isn't a climber. The last time he scaled anything higher than a stepladder was age 12, trying to retrieve a baseball from Mrs. Chen's roof. But desperation is a powerful motivator. He slings his rifle across his back, finds handholds in the bark, and climbs. 20 feet up, his arms are shaking. 40 feet up, he refuses to look down. 60 feet up, he breaks through into sunlight and can suddenly see for miles. There to the northeast is Phi-Base Susan, perhaps 5 kilometers distant. He can see the radio antennas, the perimeter wire, even the tin roofs of the buildings. He memorizes landmarks, fixes his route, and climbs back down with his palms raw and bleeding. It takes 3 hours to reach the Phi-Base. He approaches carefully, terrified that nervous sentries will shoot him. He announces himself from 100 meters out, hands raised, rifle slung, the perimeter guard calls for the sergeant of the guard. Within minutes, he's inside the wire, surrounded by curious soldiers trying to explain what happened. The convoy had reported him missing. They'd assumed he was dead or captured. When he starts describing what he found, the reaction is immediate disbelief. The sergeant of the guard, a lifer named Morrison with 2 previous tours, cuts him off. "Son, you're telling me you found a regiment-size ammunition depot? You, a cook who's been lost in the jungle all morning." "I know what I saw, Sergeant." "What you saw was probably a patrol taking a break. Maybe a squad-level cache. Few crates of ammunition. Nothing special. It was more than that. A lot more. Bunkers, tarps, camouflage netting, 30 soldiers at least." Morrison's expression makes it clear what he thinks of Castellano's intelligence assessment. "Okay, we'll report it. You go get yourself cleaned up." But Castellano doesn't leave. He insists on speaking to the intelligence officer. Morrison finally escorts him to the Tactical Operations Center where Captain Richard Byrne, the Battalion S2, is reviewing the morning's patrol reports. Byrne looks up as Castellano enters, takes in the torn uniform and scratched face and sigh. This the lost cook? Yes, sir. Morrison says he found a major enemy position. Byrne pulls out a map. Show me. Castellaniano studies the topographic features trying to match them to what he saw from the treetop. He points to a spot approximately 4 kilometers west-southwest of the Phi base in an area marked as dense jungle. Here or close to here. Maybe a click off. Byron frowns. That's been reconed. 1st Platoon, Bravo Company swept that sector 3 weeks ago. Found nothing. I'm telling you what I saw, sir. You're a cook, private. No offense, but you don't have the training to assess enemy positions. You probably saw a trail watch. 4 or 5 guys with rifles. Your brain, stressed and scared, turned it into a battalion. It happens. The room erupts. Morrison adds his agreement. A nearby radio operator mentions that Bravo Company took casualties in that sector last month. If there were a major cache there, the enemy would have moved it by now. Byrne is already turning back to his patrol reports, the matter effectively dismissed. Then Colonel Henderson walks in. He's been listening from the doorway, drawn by the commotion. What's going on? Byrne explains. Lost Cook thinks he saw something. Probably nothing. Henderson looks at Castellano. Really looks at him. How sure are you, son? 100%, sir. It's there. Something in Henderson's expression shifts. Maybe it's the certainty in Castellano's voice. Maybe it's the desperation in his eyes. Or maybe it's just the Colonel's decades of experience recognizing truth when he hears it. Captain Byrne, request a CVY flight. Photo reconnaissance 1 past this sector. If there's something there, we'll see it. If you're finding this story as incredible as I did while researching it, hit that subscribe button. These moments of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. That's what this channel is all about. Now, back to Jimmy Castellano's gamble. The 01 Bird Dog observation aircraft launches at 1,420 hours. The pilot, Captain Michael Cowboy Parsons, has flown reconnaissance missions over the Central Highlands for 7 months. He's skeptical. Brigade sends him on wild goose chases twice a week. Some nervous private sees, shadows, and suddenly command wants photo confirmation. But orders are orders. He makes his first pass at 1,500 feet, cameras rolling. His observer scanning with binoculars. Nothing obvious. He banks for a second pass, this time at 1,200 feet, risking small arms fire for a better look. His observer suddenly taps his shoulder, points down. Wait, those aren't natural shadows. Parsons drops to 800 feet through breaks in the canopy, he can see it now. The unnatural geometry of human construction. Straight lines where nature makes curves. Camouflage netting that's slightly the wrong shade of green. And they're visible for just a moment. A soldier looking up at the aircraft. Phi Base Susan. This is CVY-26. Parsons radios. Confirm positive target identification. Multiple structures camouflaged. Estimated 2 to 3 platoon present, marking position now. Back at Phi Base Susan, the Tactical Operations Center transforms into controlled chaos. Henderson immediately orders artillery fire missions plotted but not executed. He doesn't want to tip off the enemy before air assets can respond. He requests an immediate airstrike from 7th Air Force. Meanwhile, Castellano stands in the corner of the TOC, forgotten by everyone except Captain Byrne, who keeps glancing at him with something between respect and disbelief. The bureaucratic wheels turn faster than anyone expects. 7th Air Force has F-4 Phantoms on alert status at Plu Air Base, armed and ready for close air support missions. At 15:45 hours, a flight of 4 F-4s departs Plu. At 163 hours, they are on station, circling at 12,000 feet, while CVY-26 marks the target with white phosphorus rockets. Strike lead CVY-26 target is marked. Multiple bunker structures, ammunition storage. Estimate high explosives present. Cleared hot. The first pair of F-4S rolls in at 1,607 hours. Each aircraft carries 12 500-pound 82 Malawian Quachas bombs. The bombs fall in pairs, delayed fuses designed to penetrate before detonating. At Phi Base Susan, soldiers crowd the perimeter, watching the distant jungle. Castellano stands among them, his hands gripping the sandbag wall. The first explosions are impressive, rolling booms that echo across the valley. The second pair of F-4S drops their ordnance. More explosions visible now as columns of smoke rising above the canopy. And then 8 seconds after the last bomb impacts, the entire world seems to detonate. The secondary explosions are unlike anything the Americans have ever seen. A fireball erupts from the jungle, rising 2,000 feet into the air. The shock wave is visible, a rippling distortion that flattens vegetation in a perfect circle. 3 seconds later, the sound reaches Phi-base Susan. A thunderclap so deep it can be felt in the chest. More explosions follow. 43 tons of ammunition cooking off in a sustained detonation that lasts 7 minutes. When the eye smoke finally clears, aerial reconnaissance reveals a crater 200 m across. The bunker complex has simply ceased to exist along with everything in a 4-kilometer radius. The jungle is gone, replaced by scorched earth and shattered tree trunks standing like charred spikes. Post-strike intelligence assessment estimates destruction of 43 tons of ammunition, including 120 low rockets, 80 mm mortar rounds, RPG warheads, AK-47 ammunition, and hand grenades. Enough ordnance to supply 3 enemy regiments for 6 months. But the true validation comes 9 days later during the opening hours of the Tet Offensive. On January 31, 1968, North Vietnamese and Viet Cong forces launched coordinated attacks across South Vietnam. The largest enemy offensive of the entire war in Cam Province. Phi-base Susan faces a battalion-level assault. The enemy attacks with fierce determination but notable ammunition shortages. Instead of the sustained rocket barrage that preceded previous assaults, only 17 rockets hit the Phi-base. Instead of waves of attackers supported by unlimited automatic weapons fire, the enemy attacks in smaller groups with visible ammunition discipline. The battle lasts 6 hours. Phi-base Susan holds. American casualties total 4 killed, 23 wounded. Enemy casualties counted the next morning exceed 200. More importantly, intelligence officers recovering enemy documents find direct evidence. A field order from the 66th NVA Regiment dated January 28 complaining about ammunition shortages and ordering strict fire discipline during the upcoming offensive. The order specifically references the destruction of Phi-base Echo Supply Depot and its impact on operational planning. Major Harold Thompson, the division intelligence officer, puts it in his after-action report. The destruction of the enemy ammunition complex on 17th and January directly degraded enemy combat effectiveness during Tet Offensive operations. Estimated enemy casualties reduced by inability to sustain assault operations. Estimated friendly casualties prevented. 300 killed or wounded. Phi-base Susan would likely have been overrun had enemy forces possessed full ammunition loadout. On February 14, 1968, General William Westmoreland visits Phi-base Susan. He pins a bronze star with V device on Private First Class James Castellanos' chest. The citation reads, "For meritorious service in connection with military operations against a hostile force." Private Castellanos' initiative, courage, and determination resulted in the identification and destruction of a major enemy logistics facility, directly contributing to the successful defense of Phi-base Susan during the Tet Offensive. The ceremony lasts 7 minutes. Westmoreland shakes Castellanos' hand, says something about courage under fire, and departs for his next appointment. The general doesn't know, and Castellano never tells him that when the enemy first opened fire on his convoy, Castellano had frozen, unable to move, unable to react, utterly terrified. He doesn't know that Castellano still wakes up at night, hearing Vietnamese voices in the darkness. He doesn't know that the Bronze Star recipient had cried in his bunk that night, overwhelmed by fear and relief and the crushing weight of having killed enemy soldiers, even indirectly. War makes heroes out of ordinary people. But it doesn't make them any less human. The story gets even more remarkable from here. If you're appreciating this deep dive into forgotten history, drop a like and share this with someone who needs to hear about real courage. Let's continue. James Castellano rotated home in July 1968. He received an early discharge and returned to Queens where his father's restaurant was exactly as he'd left it. He worked the kitchen for 42 years, eventually taking over when Rosario retired. He married, raised 3 children, and rarely spoke about his 7 months in Vietnam. In 1995, a military historian researching the Tet Offensive contacted him. The historian had found Castellano's name in declassified intelligence reports and wanted to interview him about the ammunition cache discovery. Castellano agreed to one phone conversation. When asked how he felt about his Bronze Star, he said, "I fell out of a truck and got lucky. That's not heroism. Heroism is the guys who hump through that jungle every day looking for the enemy. I stumbled into them by accident." The historian pressed him on the impact. The 300 lives saved, the degraded enemy offensive capability. Castellano's response became the epigraph for the historian's published monograph. "I did what anybody would do. I saw something, I reported it. If that helped people, I'm glad. But I didn't do it for medals or recognition. I did it because it was my job. The broader legacy of Castellano's discovery extends beyond one ammunition dump. His accidental success highlighted a crucial vulnerability in American operations: the military's tendency to dismiss intelligence from non-combat personnel. Within weeks of the Phi-Base Susan strike, MACV issued guidance emphasizing that actionable intelligence could come from any source, regardless of the reporter's military occupational specialty. Training programs began incorporating case studies of unexpected observers, and intelligence officers were instructed to evaluate information based on content rather than source. The tactical lessons proved equally valuable. Castellano's method of climbing above the canopy for navigation became standard escape and evasion training for all personnel operating in triple canopy jungle. His patient observation of enemy activity rather than immediately attempting contact became a teaching point in reconnaissance training, and his insistence on reporting despite bureaucratic skepticism became an example taught at intelligence schools for decades afterward. Phi-Base Susan remained operational until 1971, when American forces withdrew from the Central Highlands. The Phi-Base was dismantled. The bunkers filled in and the jungle reclaimed what had briefly been American territory. Today, there's nothing there except trees. The crater from the ammunition dump explosion is invisible beneath 4 decades of vegetation growth. James Castellano died on March 15, 2011 at age 62 of heart failure. His funeral was attended by 200 people, mostly neighbors and regular customers from the restaurant. 3 Vietnam veterans showed up, men who had been at Phi-Base Susan during Tet. They stood in their VFW uniforms and saluted the casket. One of them left a handwritten note in the memorial book. "Because of you, we came home. Thank you." His bronze star is displayed in a memorial case at the 4th Infantry Division Museum at Fort Carson, Colorado, alongside a printed account of his actions. The placard describes him as an unlikely hero who proved that courage comes in many forms, and that in war, every soldier, regardless of specialty, can make a difference. Sometimes the most important battles are fought by people who never expected to be warriors. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from training or planning, but from ordinary people doing extraordinary things when circumstance demands it. That's not a military secret. That's just the truth about human courage.